Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. And the pistol we have on the workbench today I think is something very fascinating. This is a gun I have always wanted to get some trigger time on. I'm a geeky gun collector, and guns like this just check all the boxes for me. This is the Walther P5. And if you've never heard of this pistol, I don't blame you. It had limited commercial success when it was in production. It was designed in the 1970s and produced between 1977 and 1998. Its primary market were German police forces. After a number of high-profile events, they realized they needed to upgrade their sidearms, and so they contacted 3 firearms companies to produce pistols to see if they wanted to adopt them. They contacted Walther, SIG, and HK. And after the trials, all 3 of the pistols that were submitted met all of the requirements and all were adopted. And each police force was allowed to pick and choose which pistol they wanted. Walther began to produce the P5, SIG produced the P6, and HK produced the P7. The P6 essentially is a police version of the SIG P225, and everybody knows about the HK P7. But this gun kind of reminds me of the P7, not in how it works, but because it's mechanically very complex and has a few features that many other pistols don't have, such as it ejects to the left side of the gun instead of the right. Internally, the recoil springs are held within the frame. You can't take them out in a regular field strip. The slide lock and the decocker also function as one. It's kind of different and interesting, as I said, from a mechanical standpoint. It also has a very unique firing pin that is raised when you pull the trigger, allowing the hammer to hit it, so it kind of acts like a safety. It's such an interesting gun that functions like so few other pistols do. And because it's made by Walther, it's pretty darn high quality. So I am really excited to see what this thing shoots like. Also, from a collectability standpoint, these things go for a lot of money if you can even find one. So just having one here at the Texas Gun Vault to review is really cool. So before we take this gun to the range and talk about all of its interesting features, there's a few people I have to give a huge shout out to. First and foremost is the owner of this very awesome pistol. He's a local fan and subscriber. His name is Brian. In fact, this is the first pistol he has lent to the channel, so I am honored and humbled. So thank you again, Brian, for all you do for the Texas Gun Vault community. I also want to thank my Patreon supporters, because through their monthly donations and support, they help keep the lights on around here, and I could not create this content without them. And if you want to join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, there's a link in the description below, and you'll get to see all of these videos early. And as always, I want to thank my primary sponsor who provides the ammunition for these range reports and makes them financially feasible for me, my good friend Mark from Brownworks. And here we are once again to review a very fascinating firearm. And I know if you're here to watch a review on a gun like this, you probably have a few guns like it in your personal collections. You probably have rare 1911s, maybe some Beretta 92s, CZ75s, or Browning High Powers, just to name a few. And all of these guns take wood panel grips. And you might want to class up these guns to make them unique and one of a kind. Well, the grip company you need to check out is Brownworks. Brownworks is a custom grip company making a wide variety of grips for a wide variety of firearms out of a wide variety of exotic woods and materials. Mark, the owner, is an artist and a craftsman. He can apply custom logos, custom engravings, custom textures, finish these grips in a wide variety of colors, apply exotic materials like snake skin and alligator skin, and even create his own laminate woods. Pretty much anything you can imagine, he can make. Every set of grips is made to order and in consultation with the people that are ordering them. So I'm going to put a link to his website in the comment section below, as well as a coupon code for 10% off your first order. I'm going to ask you to go over there and check out everything he has to offer. And when you place your first order of a set of Brownworks grips, please tell Mark the Texas Gun Vault sent you. All right, so we have a lot to talk about when it comes to this pistol. I want to show you all of its features, and I want to go over all of its specs. So let me adjust the camera and let's get some close-ups of this really interesting Walther P5. So let's get some close-ups of this very interesting Walther P5. I think it has a great aesthetic to it. I really like the way that it looks. I think we should go over its features first because many of them are what distinguish this gun from other designs. First off, the gun ejects to the left side. It is not intended to be a left-handed pistol, and I'm not 100% sure why they went with this, but it definitely stands out in a crowded field of semi-automatic pistols that all eject to the right. Internally, this gun has captive recoil springs in the frame, and I'm going to be doing a field strip video on this gun, and I'm going to show you how to get those out of the frame if you ever need to replace them. This gun has a heel magazine release, which is pretty typical of many European guns of the time. It has a unique firing pin, where when you pull the trigger, the firing pin raises in the slide. And that will allow it to be struck by the hammer, which if you look at the hammer here, we have a little cutout in the bottom. And so when the hammer is down and the trigger is not being pulled, the firing pin rests in there. So I guess it kind of acts like a safety. And when it's raised up, it will hit the hammer up here. We also have a very interesting slide release and decocker, which act as one even though they are two pieces. So the decocker is right here, very much like a SIG P-Series pistol. But if you want to lock the slide open and the magazine is out of the gun, you just don't lift up on this. You kind of think you would, but it won't lock it open. You have to move your thumb forward and lift up on this piece right here, and that will lock it open. But if you want to release it, you can simply push down that decocker. That is very different and very interesting, as I mentioned. So now let's go over the specs of this gun. It has a 3.5-inch barrel. It is chambered in 9mm, but they also had variants of this gun chambered in 30 Luger and 9x21 IMI. It has an 8-round capacity magazine, and that mag takes a little bit of effort to get in that gun because of that heel release. It has an overall length of 7.1 inches. It is 1.3 inches wide. It has a height of 5.1 inches. It weighs 28 ounces, and it has a double action, single action trigger, very much like a SIG. So that's the next thing I want to try out. So I'm going to get out the lineman trigger pull weight gauge, and we're going to test this trigger out and see what it measures at. And so before I show you what this trigger is all about, I want to show you the box. It's so cool to have the complete set here. We have the original box with the Walther logo on it. If we open it up, we have the original owner's manual. And these are actually kind of expensive, and that's why the owner of this pistol, Brian, has put it into a plastic bag. And we even have the original cleaning rod. That's really cool because normally this stuff gets lost to time. So we have the complete set here. This is definitely a collector's pistol. Now, as I mentioned, this is a double action, single action pistol. So let's start off by dropping the magazine, ensuring there is no ammunition in it, and of course visually inspecting the chamber. And it's kind of weird to have to look at the left side of the gun for that. And it looks like the gun is clear. Let's start off with the double action pull first. And this gun reminds me so much of a SIG P-Series gun. The double action pull is kind of heavy, kind of long, but it is very smooth. I do like it. I really think this trigger face is comfortable and the perfect size for my big old fat fingers. Now, when it comes to the single action pull, our take-up is a little bit gritty, back to kind of a mushy wall, but you can stage that break. Yeah, that wall is pretty nice. I'm not disappointed by it, but this definitely feels like a duty trigger, if that makes any sense. So let's get out the gauge, let's clear any averages out, and now let's test it out and see what it measures at. We'll start in double action first. And so for our first pull, we have 8 pounds, 3.2 ounces. Not too bad for a double action, single action pistol. And I gotta remember to decock that every time. And for our second pull, 9 pounds, 4.4 ounces. Eight pounds, 15.4 ounces. And the reason I rack the slide each time is I want to simulate the gun being fired. And that hopefully will properly reset the trigger every single time. Sometimes people say when you don't do that, the trigger pulls will be off. So I want to make everyone happy. That one was 8 pounds, 13.2 ounces. And finally we have 9 pounds, 6.6 ounces, which gives us an average of 8 pounds, 15 ounces. And so we had some various trigger pulls there, and I think that's just because of the nature of the double action mechanism. So now let's clear these averages out and let's try this gun in single action. And for our first pull, we have 4 pounds, 15 ounces. Five pounds, 1.7 ounces. Five pounds, 5.5 ounces. Five pounds, 4.8 ounces. And finally, we have 5 pounds, 2.0 ounces, which gives us an average of 5 pounds, 2.6 ounces. And that's right in the sweet spot of what I would want for a duty pistol. So the trigger overall is pretty nice, especially for a gun that's probably about 40 years old. So that's all the specs of this gun and all of its features, plus what the trigger pull is like. So now let me go ahead and readjust the camera, and we'll talk about all the things about it that I like and don't like before taking it to the range. And as always, before taking any pistol to the range that I have into the channel for review, I like to share with you my thoughts on the things that I like and don't like about it. And I always want to start with the positive first. And the first thing I love about this gun is its history, and to me that's what draws me to this gun so much. You guys know I'm a geeky collector, and I feel like every gun tells a story, and this one tells a really cool story. It might not be one that many people know, but the fact that it was designed for the German police forces and it was only adopted by 2 or 3 of them, I think is kind of cool. It doesn't mean it was a failure. I honestly think it means it was kind of expensive. I think the most prolific gun of those 3 that were adopted was the P6, and that's one that is very traditional in its design. I'm also a big fan that this was used in a couple of the James Bond movies. You know, ever since they introduced the Walther P5 to James Bond, in every other movie they always try to move into a different Walther, and this one was used in a couple of movies in the 1980s. I'm also a big fan that they thought outside the box when it comes to the features of this gun. Yeah, a gun that ejects to the left, that's definitely different. And I showed you all of the other things about it that are so different from so many other pistols. From a mechanical standpoint, I just think that's so fascinating. I'm also a huge fan of the aesthetics of this gun. I think it looks great. Even though it was designed in the 1970s, I think it has a very modern look to it. And then finally, I'm a huge fan of the locking system of this gun. They borrowed it from the Walther P38, and also the Beretta 92 uses this same system, which is kind of a locking block that drops. So it's not a tilting barrel like you find on many Browning designs. So normally these have a very smooth recoil. I think that's really cool. So if you like the way a Beretta 92 shoots, you're probably going to like the way this one shoots. And now there's only a couple things about this gun that I don't like. And one of them is just intrinsic to all of the German pistols of this era, and that's going to be the heel magazine release. I know they have a different concept of how to change magazines than we do here in the United States. We love our mags to just fly out of the gun and do these quick reloads. But during this time, they didn't care about that. I've always found this to not be very ergonomic and very slow. And this release rubs up on the back of the magazine and it slows you down. I'm just not a big fan of that. I understand how it evolved over time, but I definitely think there's better ways of doing it. And then finally, the last thing I don't like about this gun is the way the decocker and the slide lock work. I kind of wish they could be more integrated. I really wish that if you pulled the slide back on an empty gun without the magazine in it, you could simply push up on that decocker and lock the slide back. It would feel very traditional, but they didn't go with that. That's a small gripe, but I think the system that they created here still is kind of interesting just because it's different. So now it's time to take this gun to the range and see how it shoots. I've been waiting a long time to do this. Now, unfortunately, I only have one magazine for this review, but I'm going to shoot 2 magazines in each test. So I'll cut the footage and reload the magazine and insert the new one so we get more rounds on the tests. So now it's time to go to the range. I'm going to set the target at 7 yards, and I'm really excited to see how this thing shoots. And if I discover anything else about it that I like or don't like, I'll come back here and report to you on it. So let's go to the range. And this, to my surprise, is a very soft shooting pistol. It feels very good in my hands. It's very naturally pointing. It's also pretty darn accurate for me. And yes, I know, I am just an average gun guy. You guys are probably way better shooters than I am. But that doesn't mean I can't shoot these pistols and enjoy them. There is one issue I have discovered with this gun, however, and that is because it ejects to the left and where I stand in the bay, those casings are hitting the side of the wall and coming back and hitting me or coming across my line of sight. So if you're going to shoot indoors with this, I think you need to be very careful about where you're standing. It's not dangerous or anything, it's just more annoying. But if you're outside, I don't think you're going to have that problem. I'm also curious, as a right-handed shooter and someone that is right-eye dominant, how often I would get a casing come back and hit me in the face. But if you're a left-handed shooter, this thing might be right up your alley. So now let's double the distance of this target. Hopefully, the accuracy of this gun is going to continue. I don't think I'm going to have any reliability issues, but now that I know how it shoots, hopefully, I'm going to be able to shoot it even better. So let's go back to the range and put a few more magazines through this very interesting pistol. And obviously I was going for the head on the same silhouette, and this group opened up a lot. Now I tried to take my time with it a little bit more to be more accurate, but I think the opposite happened. This trigger feels very mechanical. It's not bad, it's just different than many modern pistols that I review. And so I feel that when it comes to this trigger, you want to have a quicker trigger pull and not really try to stage it. It really is an artifact of its time, but that's really what I think makes it so cool and different. But like any gun, you just have to learn to shoot it well and get used to it and what's kind of fidgety about it. The trigger is nice, it just feels very mechanical, and that's why I think I threw a few of those shots. But now, speaking of this gun's accuracy, we're going to set up the target at 25 yards. I'm going to shoot this from the bench, and I want to see what the best group I can get with it is now that I know how the trigger pull is and if I take as much of the human element out of the equation. So let's go back to the range and see how this shoots at the furthest distance I can set the target out at this range. And for me as an average gun guy, I'm pretty happy with that group. It's not the greatest group ever, but for a 40-year-old gun, I'm very pleased with it. These sights are right on, and we really don't have much in the way of adjusting them if there was a problem. We do have a screw on this side to adjust, I'm assuming for windage, but that's it. But the sights seem to be right on, and it uses a 2-dot system, very much like a modern Beretta M9. But the accuracy is great, I have no complaints, and I definitely feel like this pistol falls into what I call duty accuracy. So the next test I want to do is see how well this gun shoots in double action. Obviously, you're going to carry this with the hammer down, and that first shot in a double action, single action pistol is often the one that you miss because the trigger pull is so much heavier. So for this test, I am going to use the decocker after every shot, and I'm just curious, after 2 mags of shooting this exclusively double action, will the group be any better or worse? So let's go back to the range and find out. And this gun reminds me so much of a SIG P226 and how the trigger feels. It's long and heavy in double action, but it's very predictable. And often, like the SIGs, when I shoot these guns in double action, I can shoot them just as good as I would in single action, or sometimes even better. I have to say, for a 40-year-old gun that I don't think has been worked on, the trigger pull is really nice. I think it's perfect for CCW or duty use. Now, speaking of carrying this gun, you're probably going to want to know, will it run hollow points? And that's something I always like to test on these older guns, especially those from Europe. It's my understanding that not every country over there allows their citizens to own hollow points. So sometimes gun manufacturers don't take that into consideration when it comes to their designs. Now, I don't think we're going to have any problems here, but I definitely want to test it. So let's go back to the range, run a few magazines of hollow points through this, and just make sure they work with no reliability issues. And as I expected, we had no failures. This gun just runs like a top. It's definitely not ammo sensitive. We've had no problems during this entire review. So if you're going to carry this, you can run hollow points with peace of mind. All right, so the last test I want to do is the shoot fast test. Normally this is going to be a mag dump or a quick magazine change test, but I only got 8 rounds with this magazine, and unfortunately I only have 1 magazine, so I can't do a quick test with it. But I can already tell you, because of this heel magazine release, you're not going to be able to do it super fast. It's not like a modern 2011 pistol. It's just an artifact of its time, but that's okay. But I am curious how fast I can pull this trigger and if I can keep all those rounds on target. So let's just go back to the range. Let me see how fast I can shoot this. I'm just going to point shoot it, because I always say if you have to pull your gun in a self-defense scenario, you might not have the ability or the time to get those sights on target. You want to know, is the gun point shootable? And if you had to pull that trigger a bunch, can you keep the gun on target? So let's test that out. Let's go to the range, and then we'll come back here to the garage and I'll give you my final thoughts on this P5. And for a double action, single action trigger on a duty weapon that's 40 years old, I'm pretty happy with that. I think I can shoot it pretty fast. I think it'd be kind of cool to see a gun like this with a double stack magazine and an American style magazine release. I don't know if it would be a big seller, but having the gun eject to the left would definitely be something that would catch a lot of people's attention. So what are my final thoughts on the Walther P5? Well, this is definitely an amazing and cool pistol. It's definitely a piece of history. It's mechanically interesting, and that's what I think draws me to it so much. It feels well built. It's different than many other pistols, but I think it's easy to learn, it's accurate, and it's fun. My only issues with it are very small gripes, like the heel magazine release and the fact that because it ejects to the left, if you're standing next to a wall in a shooting bay, those casings are going to bounce off that wall and probably come back and hit you. But that's more of an annoyance than anything else. So on my star system, how would I rate the Walther P5? Well, I'm going to give this 5 out of 5 stars. Yes, it's such a cool gun. It's everything I was hoping it would be. This gun simply is awesome, and one day I hope to own one of my own. You just don't see a gun that ejects to the left like this. Plus, I think all of its internal mechanisms are really cool and interesting. And so if you're a collector of German pistols, I definitely think this is something you have to have in your collection. So tell me in the comment section below, what do you think of the Walther P5? Do you think it's a cool pistol? What do you think of its features? And if you've ever shot one, do your experiences with it mirror mine? I would love to know. So, as always, thanks for watching.